Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button.
The Blue Jays offseason has been a roller coaster, and just when everyone thought Ross Atkins was done making moves, Ken Rosenthal drops a bomb that has the entire fan base split right down the middle. We're talking about Framber Valdez, and before you click away thinking this makes zero sense, hear me out, because there's actually some legitimate strategy behind this that could reshape the entire roster. So Rosenthal comes out and says there are still teams actively hunting for starting pitching. He lists the Orioles first, and yeah, I'll be honest with you, Baltimore probably has the inside track here. But then he specifically mentions the Blue Jays are still exploring options. Now that's not throwaway information from Rosenthal. This guy doesn't just randomly name drop teams without hearing something concrete from his sources. Here's what we know for sure. The Jays met with Framber Valdez back in November at the GM meetings. Ben Nicholson-Smith confirmed this happened before they signed Dylan Cease, and there was legitimate mutual interest between both sides at that time. Fast forward to now, and Rosenthal is still connecting Toronto to the starting pitching market. At this stage of the offseason, with most of the big names already signed, who's even left worth pursuing? Really, it comes down to Valdez and maybe a handful of lesser options that frankly wouldn't move the needle for a team with Toronto's current rotation depth. Now, I can already hear half of you screaming at your screens. Nick, they just signed Cease. They've got Gausman, Berrios, Bassett, Pon, and Bieber potentially coming back from Tommy John. Why on earth would they add another starter? And that's a completely fair reaction. On the surface, this seems like total overkill. But stick with me, because there's actual method to this potential madness. Framber Valdez isn't just some back-end starter. This guy is legitimately elite. He's the only pitcher in all of baseball who's had at least 12 starts with an ERA under 4 in each of the last 4 seasons. 4 straight years of consistency at that level. He's eating up innings like it's his job, which I guess it literally is. But you know what I mean, almost 200 innings in each of the last 3 seasons, sub 3.75 ERA 3 years running. And here's the kicker that makes him perfect for Toronto. He's a lefty. Think about the Blue Jays rotation as currently constructed. Cease, Gausman, Berrios, Bassett, Pon, potentially Bieber. That's a whole lot of right-handed pitching. Adding a left-handed ace-level starter completely changes the complexion of that rotation and gives you incredible flexibility. But more importantly, and this is where it gets interesting, it gives you trade capital. Ross Atkins didn't accumulate all this starting pitching depth just to watch guys compete for the 5th starter role. This is chess, not checkers. If you sign Valdez, suddenly you've got leverage to make significant moves elsewhere on the roster where you actually do have needs. Starting pitching becomes a strength you can trade from. And brother, do the Blue Jays have some holes to fill? Let's talk outfield for a second. They missed on Tucker. They missed on Bellinger after he went back to the Yankees. Anthony Santander is solid, but he's not exactly Mike Trout out there. The outfield could absolutely use an upgrade, especially if you're trying to compete in the AL East against the Yankees and Orioles, who just keep getting better. So here's a scenario. You sign Valdez. Now you've got 7 legitimate big league starters. You take Jose Berrios, who's a quality arm that other teams would absolutely want. Maybe you package him with a guy like Nathan Lukes, or even include a prospect, and you go hunting for a legitimate impact outfield bat. The Cardinals are shopping basically their entire roster right now. Brendan Donovan's name is being thrown around, and that dude can literally play everywhere. Second base, third base, outfield corners. He played over 200 innings at second, almost 200 at third, split time between right and left field. He's a Swiss Army knife, and those are exactly the type of versatile, high-quality players that contending teams covet. If you can package Berrios and maybe Lukes or another piece to St. Louis for Donovan, you've just upgraded your lineup flexibility in a massive way while still maintaining elite starting pitching depth. Or here's another angle. Shane Bieber's availability for opening day is legitimately in question. Tommy John recovery is unpredictable, and while everyone hopes he comes back strong, you can't bank your entire season on a guy rehabbing from major surgery. If Bieber isn't ready to go, or if he needs more time, suddenly having Valdez doesn't look like a luxury, it looks like smart planning. You'd have Cease, Gausman, Valdez, Berrios, and Bassett as your top five, with Pon and eventually Bieber providing incredible depth. That's championship caliber rotation depth. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Valdez has had some off-field issues. The whole situation where he intentionally threw at his own catcher was absolutely bizarre and raises legitimate questions about clubhouse fit. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't matter, because chemistry absolutely matters over a 162-game season. But from a pure on-field production standpoint, you're talking about a guy who's been one of the most consistent pitchers in baseball for 4 straight years. That's not a small sample size. That's a proven track record. And let's address the elephant in the room, the draft pick compensation. Yeah, signing Valdez means giving up picks, which hurts the farm system. But the Blue Jays aren't in rebuild mode. They're trying to win right now with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette still under team control. Sometimes you have to sacrifice future assets to maximize your current window, and if adding Valdez puts you in legitimate World Series contention, you make that trade every single time. Here's the other thing nobody's really talking about: the price. Valdez is still sitting out there unsigned, which means the market hasn't developed the way his camp probably hoped. If you're the Blue Jays and you can get him on a reasonable 4-year deal instead of the 5 or 6 years he might have been seeking earlier in the offseason, that changes the calculus completely. Suddenly, you're not just adding an ace, you're adding him at potentially team-friendly money that gives you flexibility to make other moves. Ken Rosenthal doesn't just throw names out randomly. The fact that he's still linking Toronto to the starting pitching market this late in January means something. Either the Jays have had recent conversations, or their previous interest from November is still very much alive, and Rosenthal's sources are confirming that. Either way, where there's smoke, there's usually fire. Do I think this is the most likely scenario? Honestly, probably not. The Orioles make a ton of sense for Valdez, and they've been super aggressive this offseason. But is this completely outside the realm of possibility? Absolutely not. And if Ross Atkins pulls this off and then flips it into a bigger roster construction move, everyone who's skeptical right now is going to be singing a very different tune come April. The reality is the Blue Jays are in win-now mode whether people want to admit it or not. Guerrero could be a free agent soon. Bichette could be a free agent soon. The window is right now, not 3 years from now. Sometimes that means making moves that seem redundant on the surface, but actually give you the flexibility and depth to compete with the absolute best teams in baseball. So, yeah, Framber Valdez to Toronto might sound crazy at first. But when you really break down the strategy, the roster flexibility it creates, and the potential moves it enables down the line, it starts making a whole lot more sense. We'll see what happens. Spring training is right around the corner, and one thing's for sure: Ross Atkins isn't done yet.